Hello, I welcome you all to watch the video of machine learning interview questions and answers. In this video, we are going to discuss about what are the interview questions mainly they asked in the subject of machine learning. So the first question is, what is machine learning? So you all know that machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence that particularly focus on developing algorithms and models that enabling the computers to learn patterns, and after learning the patterns it make decisions or predictions from those data without being explicitly programmed. So the question number 2 is, what are the different types of machine learning? We generally know that the three different types are supervised, unsupervised and reinforcement learning. Okay, so first, what do you mean by a supervised learning? So the supervised learning, the model learns from the labeled data. The next type is unsupervised learning. So in unsupervised learning, the model identifies the patterns in a unlabeled data. So then the next one is reinforcement learning. Suppose if the model learns by interacting with an environment and receiving either awards or penalties. So a simple example is game playing or robotics. So the third question is, what is supervised learning? So supervised learning is a type of machine learning where a model is trained using a labeled data. So the main objective of this model is to learn a mapping function from the inputs. So mapping function from the inputs means here we are identifying a futures. That one we call it as a inputs. So after identifying the inputs, we have to map them to the output. So the output here is nothing but the labeling process. So input is futures and the output is labels. So and use this mapping function to predict the output. Next question is, what is the unsupervised learning? So unsupervised learning means here the model learns patterns and structure from the unlabeled data. So the main objective is to uncover the hidden structures or groupings within the data without pre-existing the labels. So the key characteristics are, number one is unlabeled data. The input data has no corresponding output labels. So the next question is, what is a reinforcement learning? So it is a type of machine learning where an agent learns how to interact with an environment to achieve a goal. So the agent takes actions, receives feedback in form of rewards or penalties, and uses this feedback to improve further actions. So the next question is, what is a model in machine learning? So a model in machine learning is a mathematical representation of a real world process. So it is an algorithm or a set of algorithm trained on data to recognize the patterns and make predictions or decision without being explicitly programmed. So the key components of a machine learning model is, number one, input futures. Example, so if you are going to predict a health outcome means the age, height, weight. So these are the input features. The main important question here is how a model is working. So we have to train the model, then validate the model, then finally predict the output. So the next question is, what is overfitting in machine learning? So overfitting mainly occurs when a machine learning model learns the training data too well. That includes noise and outliers also. So while learning like this, it performs poorly on an unseen or new data. So it essentially memorizes the training data. So instead of learning the data, it memorizes everything. So the main causes of overfitting is insufficient data. So the model is trained on a small data set that makes susceptible to learning the noise. And the second main cause is model with too many parameters can fit the training data perfectly. So the third one is noisy data. So the presence of some irrelevant features or error in the data set that causes the overfitting. And the final one is lack of regularization. So absence of techniques to penalize the model complexity. Then the next question is, what is underfitting in machine learning? So underfitting is nothing but a model is too simple to capture the underlying patterns in the data that results in poor performance on both training and testing dataset. Essentially, the model fails to learn enough from the data. How can we fix this underfitting? So we have to increase the model complexity, then we have to identify more important features, then we have to reduce the regularization purpose. So next question is, what is the confusion matrix? So confusion matrix is a performance measurement tool for classification problems in machine learning. Here, by using this table, we used to evaluate the accuracy of a classification model by comparing the predicted class labels with the actual labels. So here, the true positive, true negative, false positive, false negative values are used. By using this, we can define the confusion matrix. The next question is, what is the cross validation? So normally it is a statistical method that helps to estimate the performance of a machine learning model by segmenting the data into multiple subsets or folds and using different combinations of these subsets for training and testing. So this technique helps assess how the model generalizes to unseen data, providing a better understanding of its reliability and reducing the risk of overfitting. So the next is, what is ROC curve? The ROC curve is generally a graphical representation of model's performance across all classification thresholds. So it plots the true positive rate against the false positive rate. So what do you mean by a true positive rate? First, it is the proportion of actual positives that are identified correctly by the model. Then FPR means false positive rate. So it is a proportion of actual negative that are incorrectly identified as positives. So next question is, what is precision and recall? Precision is nothing but a ratio of correctly predicted positive observation to totally predicted positive observations. So it answers the question of all the instances classified as positive and how many are actually positive. Okay, so here higher precision means fewer false positive. So recall is also called as sensitivity or true positive rate. It is a ratio of correctly predicted positive observations to all the actual positives in the data sets. Then what do you mean by a F1 score? So F1 score is a harmonic mean of precision and recall that we discussed before. It is a single metric that combines both aspects into a one number. The F1 score is particularly useful when you have imbalanced datasets in some situations where one class is significantly more frequent than the another. So the precision and recall can be misleading when evaluated in isolation. So this F1 score provides a more balanced score by combining both. Question is, what is regularization? So regularization is a technique in machine learning and statistics to prevent the overfitting, which occurs when a model learns the noise or random fluctuations in the training data. So regularization adds a penalty to the model's complexity that discouraging overly complex model that may fit the training data too closely. So why regularization is important? So by using this regularization, we can able to prevent the overfitting. Then what is the bias variance trade-off? So it is the main fundamental issue in a machine learning that involves balancing the error introduced by the model assumptions and the error due to complexity in a variance. So this is the validation error and this is the training error. So a good model should have a low bias and low variance. And the next question is, what is a future engineering? So a future engineering is the process of using domain knowledge, data analysis and mathematical techniques to create new features from the raw data. So what do you mean by a future? First, the variable or attributes from the raw data that we call it as a futures that can improve the performance of a model. So then what is a gradient descent? That helps to minimize the cost function in both machine learning and deep learning models. So by using the iteration process, the model adjusting the parameters in the direction of steepest descent. Okay, so when the slope is steepest means we have to increase that weight value. Okay, so when the weight is high means we have to keep them closer to this value. So when the value is in the right side means we have to decrease the weight. When it is in the left side means we have to increase the weight and make them to correct adjustable weight. So the next question is, what is the difference between a bagging and boosting? Bagging is normally a parallel process method. Here it trained multiple models on different subsets and averaging their predictions. So we can get a final value. Boosting involves training the model sequentially with each new model focusing on correcting the errors, and after correcting the errors, finally we can get one output prediction. So decision tree. So here I'm going to classify a group of animals. Normally it splits the data sets into two subsets based on their input features and resulting in a tree-like structure. So then random forest. So random forest is a ensemble based method. So random forest can be worked with multiple decision trees. So to improve the accuracy and robustness of the previous model, we are going for this random forest method. So what is the support vector machine? So mainly used for classification and regression purpose. So we are drawing a optimal hyperplane that maximizes the margin between different classes in the future space. So here is the input we are providing. So by using the classification purpose, we can get the output. Then PCA, it is an unsupervised based method. For dimensionality reduction, we are going for this. So here we are provided with the data that transform the high dimensional data into a lower dimensional space by finding the directions that helps to maximize the variance provided in the data. So what is a neural network? It's the main concept in a deep learning algorithm. All deep learning algorithms mainly used on this concept of neural network that mimics the human brain. Normally, it's having a neuron-based structure, getting an input, processing that input, and then finally producing the output. So this is how a neural network is working. Then what do you mean by a deep learning? Yeah, deep learning is a subset of machine learning. Here we are using many hidden layers. Particularly, it is effective for tasks such as image and speech recognition. So apart from this, it is also have varieties of application in both image, video, and signal processing. What do you mean by a convolutional neural network? So in this convolutional neural network, we are providing a data. Then we have a convolution operation. Then pooling. There are various types of pooling: max pooling, min pooling, and average pooling. So performing the pooling layer is make it into the flattening layer, which is a one-dimensional purpose. So the convolution layer is normally used to extract the important features and patterns. So finally, we performing the classification with the help of fully connected layers. What do you mean by a recurrent neural network? So it is an advanced version of convolutional neural network. So it is based on the feedback. So whenever we are in need of a time series based application, means at the time this recurrent neural network will be more helpful. When we have to detect weather forecasting or any stock market based prediction, means we should go for this algorithm. So in this type of neural network, it is particularly designed for sequential data, input layer, hidden layer, and output layer. The simplified version is this one diagram. So here is have to maintain a memory of previous inputs and process that sequential data. The next question is difference between a batch gradient descent and a stochastic gradient descent. So normally this gradient descent that computes the gradient of cost function using the whole data set. But in case of stochastic gradient descent that computes the gradient only one training sample. So in case of many deep learning algorithm, this SGD that we call it as SGD, stochastic gradient descent, is faster but somewhat noisy while compared to the gradient descent. What I mean by a dropout in neural network? Suppose if we want to drop out some neurons to improve the performance of the system, means we should go for this dropout. This dropout is a regularization based technique that prevents the overfitting that we discussed before. So it randomly setting some amount of neurons to 0. So this dropout that helps to learn more robust features in what do you mean by a transfer learning? So where a model developed for one task can be reused as the starting point for a model on a second related task. So it is particularly used when you're having a limited data available. At that time, we can use this transfer learning. What do you mean by a generative adversarial network? So it is a main type of deep learning algorithm. Here, two components are particularly used: a discriminator and a generator. So the generator normally creates fake data. So there's always a competition between this generator and the discriminator. So this discriminator has to identify whether the data provided by this generator is fake or not. So both of them have to compete with each other to perform in an accurate manner. So whenever we want to generate a fake thing, so this discriminator helps to identify which one is real and which one is fake. So more deep fake images and deep fake videos are mainly based on this concept of generative adversarial network. I hope these questions will be useful for you in case of placements and interview. So thank you for watching the video. Meet you in the next video. Till then, it's goodbye from Vijay.